They were supposed to be enemies. One wore the uniform of authority, the other an orange jumpsuit of condemnation. One locked the doors, the other waited behind them. Their lives were never meant to intertwine. But in the cold, gray corridors of Blackwood Correctional Facility, where the walls whispered secrets and the air reeked of desperation, a forbidden bond was formed. But love inside a prison is never just love. It's power. It's leverage. It's a loaded gun waiting to go off. And when betrayal creeps in, when loyalty is tested, there's only one way out: violence. By the time it was over, one of them would be dead. The other, standing over the lifeless body, would finally understand the price of their obsession. Before we unravel this tragic affair, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because some love stories don't end with happily ever after. They end in blood. Keenan Briggs had always been a man of control. His uniform was pressed to perfection, his posture straight, his words measured. He was a husband to a woman who adored him, a father to 3 children who saw him as a role model. At Blackwood Correctional Facility, he was more than just a prison guard, he was a man who commanded respect. To the outside world, Keenan was the embodiment of discipline. He didn't bend, didn't break, didn't falter. He upheld the rules with an iron grip, ensuring that the men behind bars remained exactly where society had put them. But beneath the surface, behind the mask of a devoted family man and respected officer, Keenan was hiding something. His entire life had been spent running from a truth he refused to name. The way he forced himself into the role of the perfect husband, the way he went through the motions of marriage, of intimacy, of love, convincing himself that if he just tried hard enough, it would all feel real. That the gnawing emptiness inside him would disappear. But it never did. Working at Blackwood provided structure, a rigid set of rules that kept him focused, kept his mind from wandering too far into places he didn't dare explore. It was easy to pretend when he was barking orders, patrolling cell blocks, keeping his life in neatly organized boxes. Then Omari Mathis arrived. Omari wasn't just another inmate. He was a predator in the truest sense, calculating, observant, always watching. A man who had spent more time behind bars than in the real world, who had learned how to survive in the shadows of the prison system. He had the kind of presence that made people uneasy. Not because he was loud or aggressive, but because he didn't have to be. Omari had been locked up for armed robbery and attempted murder, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. The way he carried himself, the way he moved, the way he looked at people, it was as if he saw right through them, straight into the places they didn't want anyone to see. And from the moment he met Keenan, he saw everything. At first, Keenan kept his distance, maintaining the strict professionalism expected of him. But Omari was patient. He had nothing but time, and he knew how to use it. The first sign was the glances, quick, fleeting, but enough for Omari to notice. Then came the conversations. Small, insignificant exchanges that shouldn't have meant anything, yet stretched longer than necessary. Keenan knew he was playing a dangerous game, but he told himself it was nothing. Just routine. Just another inmate. But Omari wasn't just another inmate. He started testing boundaries, pushing just enough to see how Keenan would react. A smirk that lingered too long. A comment laced with something heavier than words. A brush of fingers when Keenan handed him a tray in the mess hall. And Keenan, for all his control, didn't stop it. Then came the night everything changed. A routine lockdown. The kind of night where the prison felt eerily quiet, where the walls seemed to breathe, and the air felt too thick. Keenan should have been at his post, but instead, he found himself in the storage room. Alone. With Omari. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sharp shadows on the concrete floor. The space between them was too small, the silence too heavy. Keenan's pulse hammered in his throat as Omari stepped closer. "This ain't like you, Officer Briggs," Omari murmured, his voice low, edged with something almost amused. "Standing here with me like this. What you think you're doing?" Keenan's jaw tightened. Go back to your cell, but Omari didn't move. He tilted his head, studying Keenan like a puzzle he had already solved. You don't want that. Keenan should have walked away. He should have shoved Omari back, reminded him of the rules, of the danger of even standing this close, but he didn't. Omari reached out, just enough for his fingers to graze Keenan's wrist. A touch so brief, so insignificant, and yet it set off something inside Keenan that he had spent his entire life trying to bury. His breath hitched. His hands clenched into fists. His entire body screamed at him to stop, to leave, to pretend this moment had never happened. But instead, he let it happen. The world outside of that storage room no longer existed. The badge, the uniform, the vows he had made, the rules he had sworn to uphold, none of it mattered. All that mattered was the heat of Omari's body so close to his, and in that moment, Keenan crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Keenan moved through Blackwood's corridors like a man on the edge, carrying a secret that grew heavier by the day. On the surface, he was the same by-the-book officer he had always been, stern, no-nonsense, respected. But beneath that, beneath the crisp uniform and cold stare, he was unraveling that he told himself it was under control. That he and Omari had been careful. That no one had noticed the way he lingered near Omari's cell, the way his breath caught when they locked eyes across the yard. That no one had caught on to the stolen moments, the hushed conversations behind supply room doors. But Blackwood had eyes everywhere. And Keenan was being watched. Officer Lamarcus Tate had been around long enough to know when something wasn't right. He wasn't a clean cop by any means, he had his own operations, smuggling contraband in and out, making money under the table. But unlike Keenan, Tate knew how to stay under the radar. Keenan, on the other hand, was slipping. It was the way he stood too close to Omari. The way his hand twitched like he was fighting the urge to reach out. The way his expression, always so guarded, would soften just for a second when Omari spoke. Tate had seen enough. One evening, after a long shift, Keenan was in the locker room, changing out of his uniform. The room was mostly empty, the sound of running water from the showers echoing against the metal lockers. He didn't hear Tate enter, didn't see him coming until he was right behind him. "That I don't know what kinda sick shit you on, Briggs," Tate muttered, voice low, dangerous. "But I see how you look at him." Keenan froze, his fingers gripping the locker handle. His heart pounded so loudly he swore Tate could hear it. He turned slowly, keeping his expression blank. "What the hell you talking about?" Tate chuckled, shaking his head. "Don't play dumb. You think I'm blind? You think the rest of them don't see it too?" He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You want to get yourself killed? 'Cause that's exactly what's gonna happen when the wrong person finds out." Keenan squared his shoulders, forcing himself to stay calm. "Stay out of my business," Tate smirked. "See, that's the problem. It ain't just your business no more." He let the words hang, watching as they sunk in. Then he stepped back, grabbed his bag, and walked out, leaving Keenan standing there, fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. Panic clawed at his throat. This was bad. Omari felt it too. That night, when Keenan slipped into the storage room, Omari was already waiting, leaning against the shelves like he didn't have a care in the world. But his eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes, told a different story. "You're actin' different," Omari murmured, stepping closer. "Somebody say something to you?" Keenan exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. "Tate. He's watching me." Omari nodded slowly, considering this. Then, without warning, he reached out, fingers skimming over Keenan's wrist. It was barely a touch, but it sent a shockwave through Keenan's body. "You ever think about what happens if everyone found out?" Omari asked, voice smooth, quiet. "I could destroy you, Keenan. Your wife. Your kids. Everything." Keenan's breath caught. His first instinct was to pull away, to shove Omari back, but he didn't. Because Omari wasn't lying. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact, and Omari knew it. A slow smirk curled at the corner of his lips. You got a lot to lose, he continued, his fingers trailing up Keenan's arm. And I got nothing but time. The flashing lights painted the street in red and blue. His wife, Monique, stood frozen on the porch, her robe wrapped tightly around her, tears spilling down her face. Daddy. His youngest son's voice was barely a whisper from behind the screen door. Keenan's heart plummeted. The officers approached him slowly, hands resting on their holsters. The lead detective, a grim-looking man with graying hair, pulled out a pair of cuffs. Keenan Briggs, you're under arrest for the murder of Omari Mathis. Monique let out a choked sob as Keenan raised his hands. His children watched in horror as the police grabbed his arms, twisting them behind his back. The cold steel of the handcuffs locked around his wrists with a sharp click. Baby, please, tell me this ain't true, Monique begged. Keenan couldn't speak. He couldn't even look at her. As they shoved him into the back seat, he caught a final glimpse of his home, the home he had built, the family he had sworn to protect. Now, it was all gone. January 12th, the trial begins. The courthouse was a circus. Reporters swarmed the steps, cameras flashing, microphones shoved into the faces of anyone remotely connected to the case. A prison guard turned killer. What drove Keenan Briggs to commit such a brutal crime? New details emerge in the shocking affair between a correctional officer and a convicted felon. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The jury, 12 men and women who would decide Keenan's fate, sat stone-faced as the prosecution laid out its case. The state wasted no time. They painted Keenan as a predator, a man who had let his forbidden desires spiral into something monstrous. He was a correctional officer sworn to uphold the law, the prosecutor, Lauren Dorsey, said, her voice sharp. Instead, he used his position to engage in an illicit, dangerous relationship. And when the threat of exposure loomed, he did what cowards do, he silenced the one person who could destroy him. The courtroom was silent. The jury shifted in their seats. It was damning. The prosecution brought in Officer Tate next. He took the stand, hands folded in front of him, expression smug. Keenan Briggs was reckless, he testified. I saw the way he looked at Mathis. I confronted him about it, and he denied everything. But I knew. And when Mathis turned up dead, I wasn't surprised. Keenan's defense scrambled to control the damage. They argued that Omari had manipulated him, played on his weaknesses. Keenan Briggs was a man drowning in fear, his lawyer, Daniel Reese, told the jury. He was backed into a corner, trapped by a man who had power over him. He made a terrible decision, but it was not premeditated murder. But the jury wasn't buying it. The verdict on February 2nd, after only 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. Keenan sat frozen as the foreperson stood. We, the jury, find the defendant, Keenan Briggs, guilty of first-degree murder. His wife gasped. His mother let out a wail from the back of the courtroom. The judge's voice rang out like a death sentence. Keenan Briggs, I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A guard stepped forward to take him away. Monique Briggs sat at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers. The house was silent except for the ticking clock on the wall. Keenan's chair sat empty across from her, the seat where he used to drink his coffee, read the morning news, pretend everything was normal. She clenched her jaw, pressing her fingertips to her temple. Nothing was normal now. Her husband was serving life in the same prison he once patrolled. The affair, the murder, the trial, it had played out like some sick movie. But the worst part wasn't the crime. It was the shame. She couldn't step into a grocery store without feeling the stares, without hearing the whispers. That's Keenan Briggs' wife. Did you hear why he killed that inmate? She had burned through all her tears in the first few weeks. Now, all she had left was anger. How could he do this to her, to their children? A small sniffle broke her thoughts. She turned to see CJ standing in the doorway, his tiny hands curled into fists. He was only 10, but he had the eyes of a child forced to grow up too soon. Mommy, he said quietly, is Daddy ever coming home? Monique's throat tightened. She walked over, kneeling so she was eye level with her son. CJ's lip trembled. Did he really love that man? Monique inhaled sharply. She hated Keenan for making her answer that question. I don't know, she admitted. But he did love you. CJ wiped his nose on his sleeve, nodding slowly. But there was something in his eyes that broke Monique's heart. something that said he would never look at his father the same way again, and neither would she. As the cold steel bars slammed shut behind him, Keenan Briggs felt the finality of his fate settle in his chest like a stone. The uniform, the authority, the life he once knew, gone. He was no longer a guard, no longer a husband, no longer a father. Just another inmate. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had locked men away for years, and now he was one of them. His children would grow up without him, his wife would erase him, and the world would move on. He had killed to bury his truth, but in the end, the truth had buried him. This is the devastating cost of secrecy and self-denial. Keenan Briggs built his life on a lie, and when the truth threatened to surface, he chose violence over honesty. But in the end, he didn't just destroy Omari, he destroyed himself, his family, and everyone who ever believed in him. Do you think Keenan ever truly loved Omari, or was their relationship built on manipulation and fear? Could Monique have seen the warning signs, or was Keenan too good at playing the role of a devoted husband? If this story shocked you, like and subscribe for more cases that explore the darkest intersections of love, lies, and betrayal.